Hello, and thank you for joining us for this very special program, the 2017 Zimec Debate. We're coming to you from the Mulungushi International Conference Center, where the 7th Annual Zambia International Mining and Energy Conference and Exhibition has been taking place. My name is Franklin Tembo Jr. Zambia's largest is Africa's largest producer of copper and cobalt, and the country is also endowed with other minerals and precious stones. With this in mind, the 7th Annual Zambia International Mining and Energy Conference and Exhibition has once again brought together government, industry, and other mining stakeholders to showcase ideas under the theme Mining and Energy Development in Zambia, Increasing Economic Activities. But the big question is, where to from here? My guests to answer that question include Andrea Gattini. He is the head of business development South Africa, Enel Green Power, and he's on my immediate left. It's good to have you. How are you today?
Fine, thank you so much.
Great. Hope we can have a fruitful debate, and we're hoping that you're happy to be here.
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
And how's the world of energy?
A lot of energy. The country needs a lot of energy.
Excellent. Next to Mr. Gattini is Honourable Christopher Yaluma. He's a Minister of Mines and Minerals Development in Zambia. His task, as the title suggests, is huge. Honourable Minister, welcome to the debate.
Thank you very much, Franklin. I'm glad to be here. And to the audience, please welcome and good afternoon.
Thank you very much. And last but not least is John Gladston, Government Affairs Manager, First Quantum Minerals. And we're happy to have you.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here again.
Excellent. The debate will proceed, and later on will be the audience, who comprise mainly of stakeholders, professionals and experts and interested parties in as far as mining and energy in Zambia is concerned. And I'm here basically to just find out on a general scale where, after the deliberations have been taking place at Mulungushi, the opportunities in as far as mining are concerned go. Let me start off. Perhaps the minister could be the rightful person to roll this out for us. Deliberations have taken place, and in a general sense, from what has been discussed, where do we go from here?
Well, I'd like to put it straight here and try to let the people know exactly that the mining, expectation for Zambia is not yet over. We're just starting a new era. And I say so because you might recall that recently, 2 days ago, the president just launched the 7th National Development Plan, which is hinging on trying to ensure that mining still takes a key role in trying to support the economy. So having said that, I'm saying it is bright. We have the resources. We have, the the data available to allow the mining, investors to come and participate in mining. And at the same time, we've got very, very bright future, because the interest of the investors coming into Zambia is just huge for the past 2 years. So we'll maintain our resource there. We ensure that we play the game the investors would like to see as regards to fiscal regimes and policy formulation and other legal frameworks which will enhance, the moving forward with the mining industry.
You are sitting in a place where you have a lot of pessimists. This country has obviously a rich history of mining, and we're blessed by economic stability. But many will feel that at this stage, a lot more benefits would have been derived from mining.
I concur with your statement. And pessimism will always be there, where there will be the Judas and the Thomases. So it's got to be there. But remember, we've got to believe in what we are doing as a government. We are here to ensure that we move forward with mining, because we still know, despite other diversification we are talking about, diversification from mining to agriculture to tourism, that won't push mining away. Mining will still remain as the key contributor to our economy. And as such, we are saying we need to ensure that we still forge forward and come up with new, ways and means of trying to foster, create that climate to still continue to bring the people to invest in the country. But I do agree with you, there's areas where Zambia hasn't benefited. And for so saying, I would say our own Zambians, I don't think they've benefited sufficiently. But we need to ensure that this time around we grow that space where the Zambians will be exposed and be allowed to to enjoy the fruits of this resource. I know somehow maybe policies weren't put right, so that to compel the mining houses, the Chamber of Mines, to ensure that we get a share which will be beyond, what we've been having. I've always been saying that we must see Zambians enjoy mining beyond employment, because Zambians, as it is right now, Zambians, they've just gone and worked in the mines, and at the end of the day, they retire with a watch like this watch I'm putting on, Seiko, and that's it, and a bicycle. But we are saying we should see Zambians participate in mining beyond employment. Or what I'm saying is Zambians must also get involved in mining beyond, from the total value chain, whether it decides to go into mining itself or prospecting, mining into processing, marketing, up to, the end of the, So we need to create that atmosphere. It's long overdue.
Right.
We need to see that Zambians get involved into this.
Right. We'll come back to you, because as government, some will argue that the environment is created by the government. But again, there is, turning to Mr. Gladston, the fact that the minister is suggesting that more can be done to benefit Zambians as far as mining are concerned. Do you come across sentiments, expressions that companies like yours have come to Zambia and they're reaping more than they are living in the country?
Well, I recognise fully the model that the Minister is describing, mainly because that is the model that we've instigated at our two mines in northwestern province of Zambia. We've always felt that it is just simply not good enough to exploit an ore body for 20 years and then leave the country. That is simply not what we should be doing. So what we've done at Kalambila, what we've done at Kansanshi, is to build townships with affordable housing, with education, with clinics, fully serviced by roads and sewage and water, and to attract diversified businesses by constructing multi-facility economic zones to allow the business and the communities to diversify away from mining itself. That's not to say that we shouldn't be promoting the participation of Zambians in mining for years and years to come. But I think there's a diversification narrative that needs to be acknowledged as well. And that is the model that First Quantum is applying to our two mines. The Minister has been to visit on a number of occasions, and I hope the Minister has been impressed with what he's seen, and that must be used as a template going forward.
Let's go to the fact that there's need to create more capacity, as far as jobs are concerned. Does First Quantum see itself as creating the environment to have spillover jobs, as far as the operations are concerned?
There's absolutely no doubt about that. Diversification away from mining itself and the spin-off jobs that will come from creating multi-facility economic zones will generate jobs. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's proven, it's fact. So that's the vehicle we want to use to create those spin-off jobs. In the mines themselves, we heard earlier on today that the advance of technology might mean that the mines of today and tomorrow might employ less people, less Zambians than they have done previously. That is an irrefutable fact. So much more important that we now catalyse those spin-off opportunities, and that's what we're aiming to do through the MFES model.
Honourable Minister, back to you. With mechanization coming to the fore and jobs being threatened because they might be taken over by robotics, so to speak, your government is pushing for miners to go into farming and related activities. Are you worried that perhaps you don't have a master plan for the miner once, for example, copper prices fall and companies can't retain the numbers as they should?
Look, I'll tell you one thing, frankly. master plan would be there. When there is a drop in commodity price, is something you don't even have to think of immediately. But if you look back on what happened in the last 3 years, when we were confronted with such scenario, the government was highly proactive in trying to address that. We know it was very, very painful to allow to retrench, but we had no other option but to do that because we knew the industry was in a crisis. And only to salvage the industry was to apply some other ways of letting it survive through those tough times. And what we did, we said, retrench, but we want to see that you put that time when the people are not there, take that money and put into expansion of your infrastructure, do some maintenance. And yes, indeed, we had very favorable response, though it wasn't very, very welcome at the beginning from the labor unions. But later on, they came to understand, because if the mine was paying so much, was producing at this level, X, and then the supporting, labor force was 2X. Now it drops to 0.5X in production. Then would you go ahead and maintain the same labor force? No, how are you going to sustain them, pay them? So we agreed, but we said model, just appropriately model how much would be the appropriate number of heads you can drop. If you are producing at that with so much labor and your take home was this, then tell us where would you be? Then it made sense. So we said, just drop that much and then ensure that you stay in the country and continue, preparing for the next upsurge on the cycle of the copper price. And that's what we did. And yes, it was painful, but we allowed it. And today, they are back, bringing the people, bringing those heads back, and as well as they've started ramping up their production. And they've also managed to invest in, developing new shafts, which will enable them access, copper ore at depth, serious depth, which they couldn't do previously. Those and other initiatives they put in during that time. So we will benefit for that. But I'm telling you, we shouldn't sit back as a government and be scared. There are issues we've got to take, decisions we've got to take, which at the beginning people feel it's not in the best interest of the country. But we know, like I said previously, we know where we want to take this country. Right.
So hard decisions will have to be taken.
Yes.
And that brings me to whether Mr. Gattini is a bit concerned, because you've invested, what, $40 million in a purchase agreement over 25 years with ZESCO, with the possibility that in some cases there will be need to trim down numbers because copper prices are not favorable. Are you sure that you've come to invest at the right time in the sector?
Well, here in Zambia, we have been selected through the scaling solar projects. That is a different environment because in this scheme, the off-taker is ZESCO, that is purchasing from the IPPs electricity tariff at competitive price. However, we understood today during the Zimec, it is a clear point that the mining sector that represents more than 50% of the energy demand of the country, that is thriving because the energy demand. So we believe that, and we are a company present in many countries, many countries. We have facilities in Chile, we have facilities in South Africa and Australia as well. So we have a relationship with the mining sector in a different market. So we believe that even for Zambia, with the related structures, we can find a solution in order to support the mining sector through renewables that today are becoming really cost effective.
We hear the mines want incentives when it comes to energy power. For example, you want to pay less. how does the coming on of a renewable energy company like Enel Green South Africa help First Quantum?
Well, frankly, first of all, we've never said we want to pay less. What we do want to pay is a cost-reflective tariff. And we've always been of the view that to arrive at a proper cost-effective tariff, it's probably about the right time now to undergo a reform of ZESCO, and that will help bring that tariff, make it more competitive still. Because remember, bringing investments into Zambia, the jurisdiction needs to be competitive, and certainly because energy is one of our major costs, then that price of energy must be competitive and it must be stable. And that's what we've been asking for. So we'll see what the cost of service study actually comes up with. We hope that will lead to a reform of ZESCO, and we hope that will lead to a competitive tariff to keep Zambia the competitive jurisdiction that it has always historically been. We really enjoy doing business in this country, and the Honourable Minister has known us for many years now. We are a responsible investor. We want to keep being investing in Zambia for decades to come. And the way to do that is to keep the jurisdiction stable, predictable, and competitive.
Honourable Minister, how do you react to that request? Or should we call it a demand?
We will have to go that route because, you know, in the absence of cost-reflective tariffs, we are saying we are shunning other, you know, participants to be in the electricity sector. Give you an example. This is now about maybe 20, 40 years. People, private companies have shunned to come into Zambia and invest in either, you know, the power industry, simply because there isn't anything they can take home as return on investment due to low power, you know, prices. So moving from this era to the new era, we will invite a lot of investors to come into the country, and they will invest in power generation because they know they will reap what is due to them. And at the same time, we will allow ZESCO to do their maintenance, you know, plow money, you know, they'll have money to plow into, you know, their, you know, power expansion projects, which they can do today. We always sit down complaining ZESCO, reliability of power from ZESCO is zero. But we know the reason why. You see, they can't get what is, you know, fit for the supply they're giving to us. So this will be a game changer, you know, and we'll see people like him coming in because things are changing, and we'll see how we can reform ZESCO at the same time as we go this way. So it is a very good move, and we will have a lot of participants into the electricity, you know, sector or electricity industry. So we concur with that.
So what does cost-effective tariffs do for your mind? What then should Zambians look forward to once what the minister says come into effect? So you've got what you want. Any change in the outlook as far as right?
We are sailing towards the cost-reflective tariff. We are not yet there, but the plan is...
Is the government moving too slow?
A question for the minister or for myself?
For yourself. Well, he's saying we're not yet there. We're moving there. You've been pushing.
You could ask any private investor in whichever jurisdiction in the world whether they think the government is moving fast enough on their behalf, and they'll always answer no. That's the same everywhere globally. But if you ask me, the cost-reflective tariff we want to go to doesn't need to be competitive to attract more investors. Yes, it does. And we're in close... The only way we're going to get there is through close dialogue and partnership with the government. And that is the path we're embarked along.
Yes. I'll say, look, we've got a target from SADC region as to when we should all have assailed and achieved that cost-reflective tariff. And we are working towards that. But the point here, what John is saying, yes, we need to talk. You know, we need to talk. It's not a matter of trying to say, yes, this is what we want, and you say, sealed and clear. No, we need to talk and ensure that we all, you know, accept and agree to what we're going to do. But he did mention about the, you know, cost of service study, which I think will break through this and will dictate in future or whatever where we should be as regards to the question you asked him to say, what is cost reflective tariff? Where do you peg it? Those things will be known because we'll be guided.
Right. Well, Mr. Gattini, what are your expectations from the mining industry in Zambia? You've come. What are you expecting?
Well, I was saying before, we have experience in the mining sector in other countries. We are dealing with the mining companies in different and maybe probably more mature markets. We believe that renewables can support in the energy mix to the country, because the country today, the majority of the production is through hydroelectric power. Other renewable can effectively reduce the average price and can introduce, through the competitive process, can introduce new business opportunity either for the private sectors, even supporting the government in order to guarantee a higher, let's say, quality and also quantity of power for the industry.
Isn't this the best way to go instead of waiting for the government?
Well,
cheaper renewable energy.
That's a very interesting point, because I think we'll find, if you actually look in the detail that Andrea is actually describing, I think people will be surprised as to how actually competitive these renewable sources of energy can be. A cost-reflective tariff, let me assure you, is not going to be delivered by, for example, a power ship moored off Mozambique, just at the time when the nation is in a power crisis. That is never going to be a cost-reflective tariff, ever. But what Andrea is talking about is a well-engineered, well-presented, well-thought-out, and well-delivered renewable source of energy. Now, that's not necessarily going to be able to underpin Zambia's current baseload requirements, but it must be in the mix there somewhere. But as I say, I think you'd be quite surprised by the competitiveness of some of the tariffs that Andrea and his colleagues are talking about. And that needs to be taken into account when we talk about a cost-reflective tariff, and I'm sure the cost of service study will reveal that.
Honourable Minister, shouldn't the government be pushing more, which I'm sure is happening, for faster, much more efficient investment in renewable energy?
Yes, indeed, and the government has been doing that. I think what Andrea is saying, in the past 1.5 years, and I guess you might have seen at the South, M-Phase here in Lusaka, the president went to launch the installation of, the starting of 100 megawatt from, renewable, solar. So we are we are dying for it. But I'll tell you one thing, when you talk about grid power, connectivity of solar to the grid, there is a constraint, because you will be allowed, after studying, doing, modeling the network and seeing what's available on the system, you'll be constrained. You might not connect what you want, you see. So that is a pushback. But for isolated grids, where you move into have isolated solar, across the country, isolated, it is a good way to go. And you do as much as you can. But for now, we are constrained. You go to free some power by knocking on something like, if you push in Mamba Corridor into the system, you can free space to put in the grid, the renewable power from solar also. We still need to have wind power around here. We must go across from geothermal, wind power. Oceanic, we don't have it here because we don't have the ocean and all that. So we must tap into any other source of energy, bring it as a mix to complement what we are doing right now.
Are we being over-ambitious, you think?
I'll tell you, we should have done like yesterday. So you understand what I mean? Like yesterday. We are not being over-ambitious, but we need to drive this. And we should have started now. Because of the inertia which took place, we are now trying to look like we are being over-ambitious, but that's the way to go.
How do you think the development of alternative energy is progressing in Zambia, from your experience?
Well, from international investors' point of view, I think that the government took a very good direction. We have many experience in tender or other form of developments worldwide, and the structures that the government is promoting, substantially the government is attracting foreign investor, reputable foreign investor, viable investor, and operators mainly, through competitive processes that guarantee a cheap tariff for the Zambians. Also transparent processes, well structured, that guarantee that really the process is well monitored professionally, and also the World Bank guarantee a bankability of the project itself. So I believe that this is the right way to attract international operator, serious international operators in the market.
Let's talk about the need for much more confidence by Zambians in the mining sector. You walk around and you hear mixed feelings and reactions as to the benefits of the, of the mining sector in Zambia. What do you have to say to the ordinary Zambian with regards to the future and the value that your presence must, has in the country?
The first thing I'd say is that the Northwest Province is a long, long way away. And sometimes it's easy to, I suppose, get stranded in the bubble of Lusaka, thinking that what you see and read about in Lusaka reflects necessarily the rest of the country. It doesn't. And I would encourage people to make the journey to the Northwest Province, and particularly to where First Quantum operate in Sawezi and Kalambila. Engage the mood of the people on the ground there, where we have training institutes, where we have clinics which we support, where we have schools, where we have graduate programs, and ask those Zambians. Don't ask me, what do I know? Ask the Zambian miner on the ground in the Northwest Province, and I think you might be pleasantly surprised by his answer, particularly as these are in some of the most rural parts of the whole country, and one of the most beautiful parts as well.
Well, that brings me to what is being done for the small-scale miners in this country, and perhaps the Minister, you can pick that one up, the cry for small-scale miners to be supported, to increase their capacity, perhaps to reach the levels of First Quantum.
That's $1 million question, but we'll try to crack it right now. Like I'm gonna look, there is need. Seriously, I do, sympathize with the small-scale miners. The president of the small-scale miners is here, he's listening. And I'll tell you one thing, I think we haven't done much over a period of time. It's now that in the current maybe 7, 8 years that we've started trying to be seriously looking at the small-scale miners to support them, to prop them. What I would like to see done, during my tenure of office, is to see that I'll come back and say, that mine you see there, it was part of my involvement.
As your personal legacy?
Indeed. And you see, the problem is the traditional banks, you name them, the Stanbics, the chartered account, Standard Chartered, FNBs and all that, those people are highly conservative.
You're really brave. You've mentioned them by name.
And more to come to that effect. They're highly conservative. You yourself, I'll ask you, go and ask for an extension of your overdraft. Just that. And you see how much they'll tell you to bring trails and trails of, slips.
But doesn't that reflect
now,
back?
let me tell you.
Right.
Let me tell you. But there is a contradictory here to what is done to the other race who is trying to put up a company or open up an account. It's totally different story. But if my colleague, talent, he gets a mine and he got a license for exploration. But exploration carries a lot of money and he wants to go and look for money. He will run around to look for guarantee, But if now it turns to the government with a written down, a business case, also the government will tell him what has been the practice. Now we don't know, we don't have to take up these risks, in case you fall. So it's a double blow. Now we are saying as a government right now, we're in a position for a well-written business case to support those Zambians. I think that's where we are going. And I would also like to thank the European Union. They've put up, I think, about 20 million kwacha, 20 million, 20 billion, 20 billion, or 20 million kwacha to support small-scale, miners, which I think we might start seeing a way forward.
So shouldn't we be taking the banks to the round table to talk about these issues? You're obviously not happy with what is going on. Other than that, the Zambian small-scale miner will think you don't want competitors to maybe give competition to First Quantum and big players like that?
What I'm telling you is something we've been discussing with the small scale. And we at one time felt we could manage to arrange for funds like in the Emirate to buy them equipment. But you need other things apart from just equipment, you see. So what we're trying to put up is a more coherent plan with the helps we're getting and also the government coming in to see, change the performance of the small scale. Mm-hmm. This is the way forward. And I can tell you in the next 2 years, you'll see something. We want to see people represented by Mr. Njovu there, that they also excel. This is what I was saying when I started speaking. I said, what have the Zambians benefited, let alone above employment? We need a Zambian to have a mining magnet in Zambia. I think most of these people, Zambians around, they would like to see that. And that's what we're trying to move in. Mention one, we've got a lot of Zambians who ran the ZCCM adequately. Zambians from the mining, CEO, support services, engineering services, they were Zambians. So they are capable of doing something straight. But something went wrong somewhere, which we're trying now to just put right. And I can tell you, we are just about moving into that. In a few years, you'll see a mine owned by a Zambian consortium.
Do you see that happening, sir?
We've always been a big proponent of small-scale miners because we started off as a small-scale miner ourselves. And we've taken active measures. The Honourable Minister is very aware of the programmes that we have to try and promote small-scale miners. It's part of the legacy that we will leave behind, and eventually it's all very well to talk about the headlines of a $5 billion investment with $3.5 billion of tax paid. That's absolutely superb in itself, but there's a legacy that needs to be left behind as well, and whether that's small-scale mining, whether that is upskilling of workers, whether that is something which we only seem to have touched upon lightly on this conference, is not just diversification of industry, but gender diversification as well. For example, we have a trades training institute in Solwezi. This year, the intake of apprentices in that trades training institute is 100% women, deliberately. So 30 young girls started their apprenticeship, their trades training programs at Solwezi. So gender diversification is another issue that does need to be looked at, and that will be an excellent legacy for any government to leave behind. Because I think if you employ women, you get hard workers, you get quick decisions, you get intelligent thinkers, and you get committed individuals. Fact.
So the men are in trouble, I see. Let's turn to you, sir. From what you've seen and heard, what value do you think you're going to add to the mining industry in Zambia?
Well, Enel Green Power is an international operator, so has a proven track record worldwide. Our core business is operate renewable assets. So we are not developer, we are not EPC contractor. Right. So we have internal capabilities because we leverage on the value chain. So the added value that we can bring in is a competitive price for electricity, because we can leverage on our competencies in order to structure proposals that are as much as possible close to the requirements of potential client, whatever they are, the government or private sector. We can achieve cheaper tariff because we are operating with our supplier worldwide basis. So we can have economies of scale And also the company is involved in corporate shared value. So all our projects developed in the world are associated to programs to deployed in the area in which the plant has built, in order to create a human capability building for the local community, local relapse, improvement of the welfare. So we have many programs in South Africa, because this is also required by the regulation of the tender source there, but with very successful programs.
Does that give you a glimmer of hope? Is it have confidence in this setup which Mr. Gattini is talking about?
We're all optimists. That's why we're here. I keep saying that, and you know, without the motivation, without the optimism, without the willingness to go the extra mile and perhaps take the unusual option, take the risky option, then we're never going to get you know, the step change, the advances in the mining sector and the energy sector that we need. It's a no-brainer.
This conference has been taking place and presentations have been made. What for you gives you hope, or what for you stands out with regards to the future Zambian mining sector? From what has been said, what for you stands out as, yes, this is doable, yes, this is the way to go, from what you've heard?
Two things. First of all, the demand for natural resources, despite what you might read in international press, is not going to go away anytime soon. The growth of Asia, the continued growth in the Americas is only going to go upwards. So if anyone thinks that the demand for copper and the copper price is going to remain depressed and the demand will reduce, is not living in a world of reality. It'll only go up. And secondly, the other reason that gives me cause for optimism is our continued dialogue with government, and a close relationship and a direct path to the minister's door to discuss the issues, to discuss the hurdles that, you know, we're never going to always be on exactly the same page, but the mere fact that we can sit round a table and talk about those things, that is the way to solve these problems. And that in itself gives me great optimism, because that isn't true in every jurisdiction. You can't do that everywhere, but you can in Zambia. So we've got to keep talking.
Honourable Minister, you read sometimes between the lines doubts about international demand, in reference to what he has said, almost like, look, it will not always be going up, it might actually go in the negative way. Are you in line with...
I'm equally optimistic. You know, like he said, Zambia's got, I said that at the beginning, Zambia's got the resource, okay? And that resource has got to be exploited, extracted at one time, okay? And to continue. There's still more exploration taking place, you know, and new discoveries coming up. Now, two, we need to ensure that we beef up the skills amongst Zambians to support the future growth of the industry. And like he talked about dialogue, we need continuously to ensure that we are talking to each other, you know, sharing ideas, and ensuring that what they think or what we think is not going well within the chamber of mines, we go in and discuss and see how we can amicably resolve that. And we need to ensure that as a government, we provide the one needed, you know, investment climate, so that it didn't touch on the stability of policies and fiscal regimes to support the industry. We need that. We are competing for investors by, you know, just like, you know, with Congo, with Zim, Mozambique, and South Africa, and all others across SADC. But we can only, you know, get that investment if our policies and fiscal regimes are highly, you know, attractive to bring in an investor here. So it's up to us to play a better game than the others and ensure that we still continue bringing in the investors into the country.
What about the interest of the ordinary Zambian? The outlook of the copper belt, for example, where the money comes from. The miner feels betrayed. It's Lusaka that's looking good. Are you under pressure, or do you feel any pressure at all to make that area sorted out?
Did you ever hear about the Black Mountain?
The controversial Black Mountain.
So you understand. Look, you see, I am very passionate. I need to ensure that we trickle the benefits of these huge mines to our people, you know. But remember, those benefits won't be realized if you don't first secure the cake, which is bring investment in. Then the rest we can talk and see how we can include in, like we are doing all along. So yes, I do, you know, not even sleep, just to ensure every now and again they're talking about, no, we are not benefiting. But, and again, we need to find out ways and means how we're going to do it, and that's what we are doing. We are trying to empower the youths on the Copper Belt. But it's the way you do it, which will mean well for the majority of the youths than allowing a small number of the youths get whatever is supposed to be for everybody. So we need to do the right thing. We can still go ahead, but then the others might not even benefit from it.
Right.
So here is planning and putting the right, you know, things first.
Right. Let's see whether we can bring in the audience. They might have burning questions at this point, and try and get clarifications from my guests on the program at the moment. And we're speaking with Andrea Gattini, Head of Business Development South Africa, Enel Green Power, and Honourable Christopher Yaluma, the Minister of Mines and Minerals Development in Zambia. Mr. John Gladston is the Government Affairs Minister, First Quantum Minerals.
Thank you very much, Moderator, and to the distinguished panel. My name is Enel Maseko. I work for Oxfam. My questions are to Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, you have on several occasions this afternoon repeated the fact that Zambians have not benefited. You're not satisfied. And this sentiment you repeated just yesterday when you received the communique of recommendations from the Zambia Alternative Mining Endeavour. And so, for me, what really is the single most important message that you can give to the Zambian out there listening to you to justify the continued dominance of mining in Zambia, given the insignificant, or shall I say insufficient benefits and equitable distribution thereof from mining, also especially given the untold legacy sometimes of the negative outcomes of mining, such as the intergenerational contamination from lead in Kawe. So what would be that message that you could tell the Zambian listening to you? In terms of incentives that Franklin asked about, my question is that what measures are in place to ensure that the gains of the current review of bilateral treaties, for instance, are not offset by entering into equally unfavorable tax treaties, so that then we are just having a zero-sum game, as we were told in the earlier session on the energy sector. There is also a drive to give more incentive in the energy sector. How do we make sure that we realize the so-called win-win, so that we are favoring good investment, but at the same time we're not eroding the tax base for a country that needs the money so much and is being threatened by a rising debt crisis? The last question, very quickly, Minister, is about the challenge that came from the commercial manager of FQM. What measures are in place or policies to leave that legacy of mining that has that embraces the gender dimension? Thank you so much.
I think that's about 4 questions or something like that, isn't it?
We'll have to limit that to maybe a question. But thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, I think there's for starters, yes.
Mr. Maseko, you're asking me what is it that we are trying to do to ensure that that legacy, or that the Zambians will say they are benefiting from the mines. I think, you see, you take the money, give to the Zambian, that won't shape the Zambian. You must teach, like the adage says you must teach a person to fish rather than keep on giving him fish every day. You're not developing that person. To me, the participation in mining at any level, artisanal, small scale, you name it, and then well supported, that will be the best starting point. And as a government, that's what we are going in to ensure that that is done. Now, you talked about Kabwe, the lead poisoning and all that. It is very, very sad. Not only Kabwe, also the pollution which were done in Mufurira, Kankoyo, and the damage, if you look what has happened, it's really, really sad. And the government is going in fully. We've secured, there is a project right now being run, under the funding of the World Bank. This is the remediation project to correct those, environmental, issues which arose from pollution. We've got huge monies, and we're trying to implement the way forward in remedying that. And last week, we were supposed to have gone with World Bank to go and launch that in Kabwe, and also move up in Kankoyo. Just to talk about this, if you see the stats which are available as regards to contamination in the bloods, you wouldn't feel happy into the boys. And if you look at it, and also the projection of his life while being contaminated like that, it's not supposed to go even beyond 20 years. But some of them are surviving. I don't know, it's by the grace of God. So we are very much touched, and we are concerned, and that's why we contracted with the assistance of the World Bank to ensure that we look in those problems.
My name is Geoffrey Mlenga. I'm the president of Zimec, which some of you may not know about, but that's the Association of Zambian Mineral Exploration Companies. First of all, I'd like to thank the Minister for his support to Zimec, but there is one small outstanding matter that we talked about in February, which is the removal of property transfer tax on exploration licenses. As you know, exploration is a sinking fund, and if you are to pay tax on top of it, you are just discouraging the same investors that need to come here, because it means the exploration license will cost 10% more. That is one question. The other question I have is for John Gladston. Thank you for the wonderful work you're doing in Northwestern Province. Each time I see any clips on your work, I think there's been a complaint about certificates of title for land. Has that been sorted out, and who's the hindrance?
And our panelists will respond. Maybe let's start with FQM.
Land title, and thank you, Jeffrey. Just to clarify, this isn't land title that First Quantum wants to take. We have a mining license which gives us the right to mine on our concession, so that's fine. But certainly for the towns that we've built with affordable housing, the schools, clinics, the multi-facility economic zones, we've applied for the leasehold land title for those areas so that workers can actually buy their own house and have a mortgage on their house, because just like everywhere else in the world, land collateral is so important. If you own your own property through a mortgage system, which First Quantum has been subsidising, then you're more likely to send your children to secondary, tertiary education. You're more likely to stay healthy. You're more likely to start a business. That's the same globally. So we want to give our workers the opportunity to do that, but we need the land title to give to them as collateral. So that and the multi-facility economic zone, you'll only get small to medium investors come in and set up diversified industries in your MFES if they can be assured of using the land title as collateral. We've applied for the land title 4 years ago, and it has been a long haul, Jeffrey, but that's not to say that we're not still in constant dialogue with the government about that, with the ZDA specifically, and IDC and the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. We're optimistic that eventually we'll get to where we need to go, and we will get land title for those workers and for those individuals, because they're not just our workers, and that need that collateral to have a house and a mortgage in which to raise their families in perpetuity. So it's been problematic. I think there's been a bit of because what we're doing is groundbreaking. So therefore, there's a little bit of a policy vacuum surrounding it. That's not to say that those problems, those hurdles won't be overcome. And it goes back to the point that Franklin was making. Would we like the government to act more quickly on our requests? Yes, of course, and this is a classic example.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
I'll also try to tackle the property transfer tax on the exploration licenses when they're being moved. I think, and when that was being arrived at, it was a matter of looking at what would be the potential gain on that particular exploration license should that mine materialize to have, a well-endowed resource down there, and they go into mining. So we don't want to make it open that we should transfer. We shouldn't allow them to pay that. We want to ensure that they all pay, looking at the possibility for the future gains which may arise from that mine should it go into exploration. But be as it may, we can open up the discussion because, Mr. Mlenga, we did give an opportunity to look through that and it didn't go very well. We want to be highly dynamic in the way we deal with this. We are still open. I was talking to Mr. Maseko yesterday. What is contained in the Act is not something we should destroy. We are trying to better the way we shall work ahead and promote the industry. So we are open to discussion.
I'm afraid that's all we can take as far as questions are concerned in the interest of time. But I'll give each one of you 30 seconds to summarize from where the conference is done. You've heard the presentations. What are you taking from this conference, and how does it relate with the question, where to from here?
Well, we, as an investor in the renewable sector, we heard a lot of we see a lot of opportunity here in Zambia for having a proper energy mix in the country that can support either the energy sector, either the government to reduce the cost of the ZESCO. And I think that the approach that the government is taking in order to deploy renewables and therefore to create this energy mix is the right one. The energy sector in Zambia has an important weight in the GDP of the country. So I think that renewable can contribute to support continuously the energy sector in this direction.
I think that was 47 seconds. Honourable Minister, you think you can manage in summing it up in 30 seconds?
Zambia is very, very ripe for new investment. We've seen that we are forging forward to ensure that we map as much as we can for the minerals as well as oil industry so that we can have new investors coming in. 3, we very much would like to tell the investors, Zambia is very, very safe. Zambia is a very, very stable country. As you might have seen, the president is highly committed to ensure that he delivers on his mandate to make this place as safe as it is and as peaceful as it could be. So please, I'm saying with the power, those problems which you are hinging around thinking of, that might, push the industry aside. No, we have power generation coming onto the stream. We have a lot of projects. We have them trying to come in. So you never see what you saw in power for the next decade to come, even 20 years to come.
That's a promise.
Yeah. We've learned a lot from the past.
The previous experience.
We burnt our fingers.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And finally,
I would say that the way to preserve the current investors who are here in Zambia and the way to attract more is to ensure that Zambia remains a stable, predictable and competitive jurisdiction. And unashamedly, I want to plug Mining for Zambia website, sponsored by the Chamber of Mines, which is a wealth of great information and not least an excellent interview with the Minister of Mines. Thank you.
And I think the panelists deserve a big round of applause. And I'm afraid that's where we have to wrap it. And we do hope that more conversations can take place until the next conference is held. And one more time, thanks to the panelists. And we've had Andrea Gattini, Head of Business Development South Africa, Enel Green Power, Honourable Christopher Yaluma, Minister of Mines and Minerals Development, Zambia, and John Gladston, Government Affairs Minister, First Quantum Minerals. I'm Franklin Tembo Jr. Thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.